There was a folder sitting in a filing cabinet 40 feet from where I was eating dinner, and inside it was a version of my own handwriting I had never written. That's the part my family didn't know yet. They thought the surprise that night belonged to them. My name is Nora Callahan. I'm 34 years old, and I had just sat down to a holiday dinner in Ohio when my sister leaned over the potatoes and said, loud enough for the whole table, "Still single at 34? Must be a quiet Christmas for you." Everyone laughed. My father laughed the hardest. My mother lifted her wine glass and smiled the way she always smiles when something cruel needs a coat of sugar on it. "Oh, she's only teasing," she said. I didn't answer right away. I set my glass down instead. Because here's what none of them understood. I hadn't flown home for the ham or the toast or another year of being the joke between courses. I'd flown home because 6 days earlier, an old technician named Walt, who still worked the floor at my family's company, called me on a Tuesday and said 4 words that changed everything. "I never saw you sign." Welcome to the show where the quiet women finally stop apologizing, the ones who kept the peace until the peace started costing them everything. Stay close, because this one gets loud before it gets honest. You should know who I actually am, because the woman my family describes at that table doesn't exist. I'm an acoustic engineer. I design spaces that hold sound the way a good hand holds something fragile. No spill, no echo, nothing lost. Concert halls. A pediatric ward in Denver where the machines hum instead of shriek because I taught the walls how to soften them. I built my career out of a rented studio and a secondhand microphone, and now companies fly me across the country to fix their silence. To my family, none of that is real. To them, I am the daughter who left, the one who missed the schedule everyone else followed, the punchline wedged between the mashed potatoes and the pie. I hadn't been back in almost 2 years. I wasn't planning on coming this year either, until Walt's phone call landed like a stone in still water. "They're closing a deal on the panel line," he told me. "Investors, big number. Your father keeps telling them everything's clean, signed over, all in the family." Then the pause. "But I never saw you sign anything, Nora. Did you?" I hadn't. That's the moment I booked the flight. Not for the toast, not for the ham, for a signature I needed to see with my own eyes before anyone convinced me I'd imagined it. Because a signature is nothing until it's yours. And it's yours until someone in your own family decides it belongs to them too. None of that had surfaced yet at the dinner table. My little sister, Reagan, was still on a roll, still spearing a carrot like it owed her something, still building the version of the evening where I was the only person in the room who hadn't accomplished anything worth mentioning. She had no idea what was sitting in that filing cabinet. Neither did I know yet exactly how far my father was willing to go to keep it there. If you've ever sat at a table where your own family rewrote your life into a joke, stay with me. It only gets quieter before it gets loud. Comment where you're listening from and follow along, because what happens in the next 20 minutes will change how you think about the phrase, keeping it in the family. Reagan ran marketing for the company now, which mostly meant she was skilled at deciding which version of events people were allowed to hear. "Some of us built things," she said, still smiling at the carrot. Nora went off to do, what was it again? Make rooms quiet? More laughter rolled around the table like it always did. My father set his fork down and did the thing he'd always done. The thing that used to make me feel chosen when I was small. He spread his hands like he was blessing the whole room. "This family built something real," he said. 52 years of the Callahan name on that building. Whatever any of us does, we do it for the name. The name comes first. It always has. Everyone nodded like he'd read scripture. My mother refilled glasses and murmured, "Let's not make the meal about all that," which is what she says whenever anything true tries to stand up off the floor. I felt the old pull to shrink. 14 years I'd been doing exactly that from a distance, being the quiet room nobody had to raise their voice in. I looked at my mother, glowing, glass lifted halfway to the ceiling for a toast that never quite arrived. And, for the first time in a long while, I didn't shrink. I set my drink down gently, the way you set down something you're finally done carrying. "Don't worry about me," I said, my voice almost kind. "I've been married for 7 years. The table didn't just go quiet, it went vacuum sealed. I know silence professionally. I can tell you the difference between an empty room and a room holding its breath. This was the second kind. My mother's glass froze midair. Reagan's fork clicked against her plate. "You're what?" "Married," I said. 7 years, actually. My father's eyebrows climbed toward a hairline that had been retreating for a decade. 7 years, he repeated slowly, like a number that refused to add up. And you never told your own family? And there it was, before the plates were even cleared. Not are you happy, not who is he. Just, how could you keep this from us, as if the keeping were the crime? My mother's hand wasn't steady when she lowered her glass. Nora, why would you hide that? I looked around the table at people who had spent over a decade turning my life into dinner party material, and I thought about explaining that you don't hand your happiness to people who've already shown you what they do with the things you love. Instead, I said, because I wanted one thing that was only mine. Questions came fast after that. What's his name? What does he do? Why isn't he here? Is he ashamed of us? That last one was Reagan, meant to sting. I gave them almost nothing. His name is Julian. He's traveling for work. No, he isn't ashamed. Yes, it's real. My father leaned back and studied me with an expression I couldn't read yet, one that would make terrible sense later. My mother reached over and touched my wrist. We just want to be part of your life, sweetheart, she said, and for one dangerous second, I nearly believed her. But I hadn't flown in from Denver and rented a car at the Columbus airport to be part of anyone's life. I'd come for a document. And sitting there with my mother's hand on my wrist, I understood something cold and clean. They thought tonight's biggest surprise was already on the table. It wasn't. The real one was sitting in a folder 3 rooms away, with my name forged at the bottom of it. I was the only person at that table who knew the folder existed. To understand the folder, you have to understand the panel first, so let me take you back 12 years. I was 23, and the family company, Callahan Acoustic Works, was 3 months from folding. I'd already moved out at 19, left the smallness behind, but I still came home some weekends, still believed family was something you could repair if you gave it enough of your own hands. The company made plain gray sound panels, the kind bolted into 1,000 identical office ceilings, and nobody was buying them anymore. So I spent one whole winter in the back workshop designing something different, a layered core, tuned so a room could stay warm without turning muddy, a panel that didn't just kill sound but shaped it. I built the first one with my own hands and signed the inside of the frame where no one would ever look, the way a luthier signs the belly of a violin. My initials and a line underneath them I actually believed in. That panel saved the company. Orders came back. The Callahan name stayed on the building for another decade because of a design a 23-year-old built alone in the cold. And slowly, the way these things happen, the story got retold without me in it. It became the Callahan panel. It became my father's achievement. I let it happen. I told myself it didn't matter, that I had my own city and my own quiet now, that letting them keep the credit was a kind of love. That was the lie I lived inside, smooth as a sealed room. And now, that same panel was the crown jewel of a deal worth nearly $11 million, and somewhere in a folder, my name was pretending to have agreed to sign it all away. The next morning, I drove to the old building, telling everyone I only wanted to see the holiday decorations. The place looked prosperous in a way it never had in my childhood. Fresh paint, a glass conference room, a brass plaque with the founding year, and my father's name embossed like a coat of arms. Buyers were already touring, a man in a good coat, a woman with a leather portfolio, the careful politeness of people deciding whether to spend a great deal of money. My father was in his element, walking them past the display wall. "Everything you see, we own outright," he was saying. "Every design, every patent assigned to the company clean as a whistle signed years ago. We keep it in the family." I stood near a rack of holiday cards and felt the floor tilt very slightly because I knew at least one of those signatures had never been given. I asked casually if I could look at the intellectual property paperwork. Reagan intercepted me before I finished the sentence. "Why would you need to see that?" she said, arms folded. "You don't even work here, Nora. It's not really your business." "I'm only curious," I said. She tilted her head. "This is the thing about you. You disappear for 14 years, show up with a secret husband, and now you want to poke around the deal that's about to set this whole family up for life. People might think you're jealous." My mother, passing with a cookie tray, chimed in without breaking stride. "Oh, she's only joking. Nora, don't make a face." There it was again, the sentence that turns every knife into a joke and every joke into your fault. It had been erasing my hurt for 34 years, and it was about to be asked to erase a felony. It gets quieter before it gets loud from here. I stopped asking permission after that because you don't ask the people who forged your name whether you're allowed to see the forgery. Walt found me by the loading dock, breath fogging in the cold. "You didn't hear it from me," he said, and led me to a side office where a due diligence binder sat open on the table, tabbed for the buyers to review. Nobody else was in the room. I turned to the tab marked Intellectual Property Assignments, and there it was. A one-page agreement transferring all rights to the acoustic panel design from its inventor to Callahan Acoustic Works, dated in April, 5 years earlier. Signed on the line marked Inventor, Nora Callahan. My whole body went still in the particular way it does when the professional part of your brain takes over because the rest of you can't. I have signed my own name close to 100,000 times. I know its rhythm the way I know my own heartbeat. This wasn't it. Close, but wrong. The end sat too round. The tail on the final L curved the wrong way. The whole signature rested too neatly on the line without the slight downhill drift my hand has carried since grade school. Someone had practiced. Someone had studied a sample of my handwriting and rehearsed it until it could fool a stranger. It didn't fool me. I gathered evidence the way I always do when the ground shifts under me. I photographed the page in good light. Then I checked the date against my own life, because a signature is a claim about where a person was, and where a person was can sometimes be proven. 5 years earlier, that April, I hadn't been anywhere near Ohio. I'd been in Vienna, presenting research at an international acoustics conference. My name printed in the program, my face in a group photo on a stage, my passport stamped, my hotel bill charged to my own account. I remembered the week because it rained the entire time, and I gave the best talk of my career to a room that finally understood what I actually did. On the day this document claimed I sat in Columbus and signed away my life's best work, I was 4,000 miles away in the rain, being taken seriously. This wasn't a filing error. Nobody accidentally forges a date. Somebody had sat down with a pen and chosen to put my name where my consent should have been, because it was easier than asking, or because they already knew what I'd say. I closed the binder exactly as I'd found it and walked back to the lobby, where my father was laughing with the buyers. I smiled at him and thought, I know now, and you don't know that I know. That evening I helped my mother in the kitchen, needing to understand how deep it went. Funny, I said lightly, drying a plate. I don't even remember signing anything over to the company back then. Her hands slowed in the suds. Oh, sweetheart, you didn't have to worry about that, she said, warm as ever. Your father handled the paperwork. You were always so busy with your rooms. He said, why burden you with forms when it all stays in the family anyway? There it was. My mother, confirming everything without meaning to. My father had signed my name, and to her it wasn't a crime, it was a courtesy. She had no idea what she'd just told me. Stick around because next I confront the one person who could actually answer for it, and his answer will chill you. I found my father in his study that night with a glass of bourbon and the ledger he still keeps by hand. I closed the door and kept my voice level, because I've learned the calmest voice in the room is always the one people end up hearing loudest. Dad, there's an assignment in the buyer's binder with my signature on it. I never signed it. You did. He didn't flinch. He didn't even pretend confusion. He looked up at me almost proudly. So you found it, he said, like I'd solved a puzzle he'd left for me on purpose. You built that panel under this roof, Nora. You were a Callahan, using Callahan tools in a Callahan building. That design was always ours. All I did was finish paperwork you were too busy for. That's not stealing. That's a father cleaning up after his kid. That's forgery, I said quietly. He waved the bourbon like it was nothing. Family isn't a crime. You want to know a crime? Walking out and letting the company that raised you collapse? Then, for one unguarded second, the armor slipped, and I saw the wound underneath. My father did the same thing to me. First panel line I ever drew, he put the company's name on it and mine nowhere. I cried about it for a year. Then I understood. That's how a family survives. You feed the name, and the name feeds you. He looked up at me. I did you a kindness. Someday you'll see it. He believed every word. That was the worst part. He wasn't a villain twirling a mustache. He was a man who'd been robbed young and decided the theft was a tradition worth handing down. I told him I wanted my name off the deal, that the assignment was void because I never gave it. That's when the warmth drained out of the room. My father is never colder than the moment you stop being useful to the story he's telling. Off the deal? He repeated. Do you understand how many jobs are riding on that panel line? Walt? The whole floor? Your mother's retirement is tied up in this company. If you blow this up over a signature, over your pride, that's not me destroying this family, that's you. Everyone will know it was you. And there it was, the oldest tool in the house, sliding into my hands whether I wanted it or not. Make yourself small so the room stays smooth. Carry what nobody else will carry. Be the strong one. the one who sacrifices. I felt the pull of it in my chest like gravity, because I have always been the one who absorbs the cost so nobody else has to feel it. Standing in that study, watching him hand me the blame for a crime he committed, I finally saw the shape of the machine I'd been feeding my entire adult life. It ran on me. It had always run on me. I didn't answer him. I walked out through the dark house and drove back to the company one more time that night, using a spare key Walt had given me, telling the night guard I'd left a scarf behind. What I actually wanted was to stand in front of the lobby wall, where panel number 1 hung under a spotlight, framed like art, the very first one I'd built by hand at 23. A brass plaque beside it read, "The Callahan Line, the design that built our future with my father's name as founder." My name was nowhere on it. I lifted the frame off its bracket. It's heavier than it looks. I turned it over. To the side, no buyer ever checks, no plaque ever reaches. And there, in the pale wood of the inner frame, in the small block letters of a 23-year-old who thought she was signing something only she would ever see, it still read what I'd written 12 years earlier, my initials. And beneath them, the line I'd believed in, the room where you can finally hear yourself think. I ran my thumb across the letters. They were mine. They had always been mine. The front of that panel belonged to the family, to the name, to the deal being pitched to men in good coats. But the back of it, the part holding everything up, the part actually doing the work of shaping silence, that was me. Hidden, load-bearing, uncredited, exactly like the daughter. I sat afterward in the rental car with my phone in my hand and my husband's name on the screen, and I want to be honest about what I almost did. Julian is a partner at an investment fund. He moves money, and he moves the people who move money. One phone call from him, and this entire deal could have evaporated before anyone signed a thing. Or he could have swept in, funded the company himself, and bought my family's gratitude for the rest of their lives. I could have made this disappear, or made myself the hero who saved them. Either way, I'd walk back into that house holding the one card that finally made them see me. I put the phone in the cup holder instead, because using Julian to erase this, whether by killing the deal or rescuing it, would have made me exactly what my father was, someone who solves a problem of truth by burying it under power. I didn't fly home to become my father. I flew home to stop being his tradition. The next morning, before deciding anything final, I called an intellectual property attorney in Denver I'd worked with years before, someone who owed me nothing and would simply tell me the truth. I laid it out plainly, a design I created, an assignment I never signed, my father's pen where my consent should have been. She listened, then gave it to me straight, the way good lawyers do. If you didn't sign it, that assignment is void. Not weak, void. A forged signature transfers nothing, which means legally you never gave up that design. You still own it. She paused. The forgery itself is a criminal matter here, but that part isn't yours to prosecute or forgive. That part just is. I hung up and sat with it. The power in this room had never been my husband's money or my family's name. The power was a single signature I hadn't given and wouldn't give. A weapon that was nothing more than the plain truth of where I'd been and what I'd never agreed to. All I had to do to bring the whole clean whistle-shine story down was refuse to lie. They could tell something in me had shifted. My family finds out exactly who my husband is, and the whole story they'd told about me changes overnight. By the next afternoon, my mother was hovering, refilling my coffee before it was empty, asking if I was sleeping all right, if the marriage was all right, if I was all right. Each question, a small hand testing a door. On the porch, she took my hand and said the thing she'd clearly rehearsed. Whatever you and your father are tangled up about, please, sweetheart, let's keep it in the family. That's how we've always survived. Keep it in the family. The grown-up version of she's only joking. Same spell, higher stakes. Reagan had changed too. She brought me tea I hadn't asked for and said, sweetly, "You know I love you, right? However things shake out." She had never once said that to me sober. That's when I understood. The house had smelled the danger and was already rearranging itself around managing me, softening me, folding me back in before I could do anything irreversible. It turned out Reagan, who is very good at finding out which version of a story is true, had spent the days since dinner looking into Julian. His name isn't a common one, and his fund isn't hard to trace if you know where to look. By that evening, she knew exactly who my husband was, and the punchline she'd built me into for 14 years dissolved in real time and reassembled into something new. I wasn't the joke anymore. I was the connection. I was suddenly, for the first time, worth being nice to. That night, my father called a family meeting to decide what's best for everyone, at the same long table where I'd been the punchline 3 nights earlier. He opened it like a man addressing a boardroom. Then he slid a fresh page across the polished wood toward me, a new assignment, dated that week, a pen resting on top. "All you have to do," he said gently, "is sign what you would have signed anyway, and it's finished. No mess, no strangers, just family, taking care of family." My mother was crying softly. Reagan watched me with an intensity that had nothing to do with love. Every person at that table leaned toward me, waiting for me to do the smooth thing, the quiet thing, the thing I'd done my whole life. I didn't sign it. I said I needed to think, and I took the page with me. That night, I stepped into the cold backyard where the string lights blinked red and green and told Julian everything: the folder, the forged date, Vienna, the panel, the family meeting. He was quiet in the way that means he's actually listening. One of 10,000 reasons I married him. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Not what should we do. What did I want? "I want to tell the truth," I said, "and let the truth do whatever it's going to do." "You should know something," he said carefully. "If our fund has any connection to this buyer, and it might, the moment your name is on anything, I have to recuse myself, declare the conflict. I can't touch it." "Good," I told him. "That's exactly right." That was the whole difference, standing in the snow between 2 houses I'd lived in. My family's instinct was to use every relationship as leverage. My husband's instinct was to step back the moment his presence could bend the outcome. One of them thought power meant making problems disappear. The other thought integrity meant refusing to be the reason a problem stayed hidden. I stayed up almost the entire night after that call, writing the one document that would end everything. I spent that night at the small desk in the guest room doing the least dramatic and most important thing of my life. I wrote a short, factual letter to the buyer's counsel and accounting team. No anger in it anywhere. I am the inventor of the acoustic panel design. I did not sign the assignment dated in April 5 years ago. On that date, I was in Vienna, and I can prove it. I do not ratify that assignment now. I hold the rights to the design. I signed it with my real signature, the one with the downhill drift, the one that's actually mine. I sat with what it meant because I owed myself that much honesty. This letter wouldn't just embarrass my father, it would stop an $11 million deal cold. There would be no clean closing. Walt might lose his job. My mother's retirement might shrink. The Callahan name might come off that building after 52 years. I did not pretend otherwise. This was the line, and once I crossed it, there was no version of the morning where I got to be the good daughter again. My mother came to me before dawn, sat on the edge of the bed, and made her last appeal, aimed straight at the deepest part of me. "You've always been our strong one," she said. "The one who could carry things without complaining. Don't become the one who breaks it. Please sign. Be who you've always been. Just this once more." I held her hand. "Mom, I forgive him. I forgive all of you. But forgiveness isn't a signature." She didn't understand. I watched her not understand, and I finally saw that my silence had never protected anyone. It had funded them. Every joke I let land without answering taught my sister that dismissing me was free. Every buyer my father told the design was his taught him that taking from me carried no cost. The closing happened at 10 the next morning in the glass conference room. I walked in wearing my own coat, carrying my own envelope, and took a seat without being offered one. My father sat at the head of the table, expansive, gracious, the founder about to be rewarded for 52 years of work. Then the accountant looked up from his laptop. "Before we finalize the transfer, we need the inventor to confirm the assignment on the record. Is the inventor available?" Every head turned toward me. My father moved first, smooth as ever, sliding the fresh, retroactive assignment toward me, pen on top. "That's my daughter. Go ahead, sweetheart." I looked at the pen. Then I looked at him and slid it back an inch. "I'm not confirming it," I said, my voice steady. "Because I never signed it." I opened my envelope and laid my statement on the table. "I'm the inventor of that design. I never assigned it, and I'm not going to ratify it now to make this easier." Into the silence that followed, I said the sentence I'd been walking toward my whole life. "I forgive you, Dad. I'm still not signing." Reagan hissed for me to call Julian and fix it. My mother said my name like a question. My father tried to laugh it off to the buyers as a misunderstanding, reaching, like always, for the nearest lever of power. I told the room instead that my husband was already recusing himself, that neither of us would use him to bury this. If you want the design, I said, you'll license it from me honestly in writing on the record. My father came up out of his chair, red-faced, shouting that I'd destroy the family over pride, that the name comes first. I let him finish. Then I answered quietly, no, Dad, the truth comes first. The name is just what you called it when you needed us to stay quiet. He had no answer. There isn't one. The deal collapsed, but the company didn't. A smaller, honest one came along months later, once the title was clean, and it survived at the size it had actually earned. Walt kept his job. My father has never once admitted he was wrong. My mother and I speak now, carefully, across a distance that no longer pretends to be closeness. Reagan hasn't apologized either. Not really, but months later she called just to ask how the licensing worked and listened to the whole answer without a single joke. Panel number 1 hangs in my studio in Denver now. I bought it back for almost nothing after the deal fell apart, and I turned it around, so the front faces the wall, and the first thing anyone sees when they walk in is the pale inner frame, my initials, and the line underneath them. The room where you can finally hear yourself think. If you've ever been the strong one, the quiet one, the one who kept the peace until it started costing you your own name, ask yourself tonight whether you're keeping a peace or funding a lie. Then do the brave, quiet thing. Thank you for listening. Drop a comment, hit follow, and I'll see you in the next story.